first time.
In the spring of 1994, you were the first Korean American poet.
Korean American poet invited to the Library of Congress from Poet Laureate. And I read my poems in Korean, and the Poet Laureate read in English. And they produced about 20-some poems for one night. And another chance I had was at the bicentennial year, 2003. The Hawaii Sugar Plantation was the first Korean immigrants' arrival in 1903. So the Library of Congress celebrated the Koreans' centennial year, 2003. That's the time of arrival in 1903 was, I think, January or February. So I think January 2003 they invited me again for the poetry reading, focusing on the centennial year and the Korean American literature. I think that's a great privilege for a Korean poet to read his poems in the Library of Congress. But I think we should import that kind of Library of Congress poetry reading tradition in the Fairfax County, whether it's a poet library or a George Mason library, because this is the kind of main area of Asian Americans or Korean Americans in the Washington metropolitan area. So why not we initiate and then create this kind of program so we can create the image of Korean Americans or the Asian Americans as a poetry loving or literature loving people. American friends or neighbors still do not know us. They even surprised to see my poetry book. Oh, even Korean poets exist in this town. But this is funny and ridiculous, but this is the kind of thing we should explore, kind of unknown terrain of a Korean American community or Asian American community.
And you just wrote a poetry book, and what is, could you put it up, please?
Moon of New York just released. This is the poetry I published since I arrived at Indiana University. The first poem is My Sail, Crossing the Pacific. I came, I don't know whether you remember, I came to this country with $70 in my pocket, and then all the way until most recently my son's wedding reception I read my poem. So kind of my long life from 1968 through 2007, my poems in this book. This is kind of my life in verse. My life in prose is forthcoming. That's Cora, I think you received some of it. I titled The Song of Myself, and the subtitle is A Korean American Life.
Would you like to read a poem from that book, if you could?
To.
Yes, please.
Like to. I'm going to read some of my poems I wrote when I came to this area. You may remember I came to this town,
Fairfax County?
Yes, Fairfax County, as an employee or as a Department of Defense fellow in the Office of Secretary of Defense as an environmentalist. My former position was Assistant for Environmental Quality. At that time I produced a poem, a resume. Born in the last days of Japanese rule in Korea. When I was 10 years old, I was a refugee in the Korean War. When I was 20 years old, I was a college student with poetry and art. When I was 30 years old, I was a college teacher in Wisconsin. When I am 40 years old, I was a bureaucrat in Washington. When I reach 50, I will soothe my 2 children's growing pains. When I reach 60, I'll be ready to depart from this world, but no one knows tomorrow, no one knows 1 inch's future. This is my little poem. When I was 40 years old, I arrived in this town and a high-level government official in the Pentagon. And I look forward the next 10 years and the next 20 years, and then now I passed that time, I am now a retired fellow in this town, so I look back my life, and then this is my first starting point in this town. Okay.